Proposition 58, the non-English languages allowed in public education. We have expert Dr. Jeanine Kraybill. She's an assistant professor of political science and pre-law advisor at Cal State University, Bakersfield, where she teaches research methods and classes on government institutions, particularly the court and presidency. Dr. Kraybill, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Just to give everyone a quick summary of what Prop 58 does.
Sure. Essentially, what Proposition 58 does is it amends Prop 227 that was passed, was a fairly good mandate, about 70% in California in 1998. You kind of have to talk about that to understand Prop 58. So in a quick nutshell, what Prop 227 did, the English Language in Public Schools statute, is it required schools to teach limited English proficient students, so that's students who weren't proficient in English, that they had to be taught essentially mainly in English. So it effectively eliminated bilingual education classes, mandating English immersion for most students. And that kind of came out of a time period where people were favoring English-only education. There are some arguments that it also kind of came out of stereotypes and a degree of racism that was existing. Importantly, Prop 58 amends a portion of Proposition 227. We still need, students to be English proficient, but now that more research has come out saying, bilingualism and multilingualism is very good for cognitive development. It creates a language bonus, an economic bonus for people who know how to speak more than one language. What we've seen, what Prop 58 will do, is it increases the availability of bilingual education programs, and it requires districts with a sufficient number of English language learners to launch multilingual education programs with parental and community input.
Notable supporters include the ACLU and Los Angeles Unified School District. The opposition is basically just an organization called Keep English for the Children, which I think that sounds pretty evil.
Well, one thing to kind of really keep in mind is that Prop 227 really was spearheaded by a Palo Alto software entrepreneur by the name of Ron Unz, and he led the campaign for English only. He hasn't really fundraised too much for it, and we haven't really heard too much from him, except that he still supports English only, teaching and content instruction in schools. And so there isn't a fierce opposition now like there was 18 years ago. The main legislator behind this initiative is Senator Ricardo Laura. He's a Democrat out of Bell Gardens, and he was able to really kind of launch a bipartisan effort for this when it was working its way through the state legislature. And Jerry Brown supports this measure. As our demographics in the state have become more diverse and more research has come out, suggesting the benefits of dual immersion and bilingual education, that voters really take a different look at this than they did with Prop 227 18 some years ago.
So Proposition 58, Dr. Kraybill, what's your vote?
I say a yes, but I have a caveat. I do think, though, that there needs to be a statewide effort to equip us with bilingual educators in this state, because one of the negative things that happened in light of Prop 227 is we weren't putting out as many bilingual educators. And so essentially, we've had less and less bilingual educators go through proper credentialing programs, so there will be a higher demand for them. Legislation only does well if the state meets a proper commitment to that legislation, to the popular will. And so if the popular will is heard in the affirmative of this, then I think it needs to be matched with a statewide effort to invest in bilingual educators.
That's a very long caveat, but if you write really small, I'm pretty sure you can fit that whole thing on the ballot.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Likewise, because if you weren't here, this would just be me talking to myself right now. So
wonderful. And last thing, if people want to know a little bit more about this, I wrote a recent article for the Kern Economic Journal on Prop 58, and it's the language bonus, what California's Prop 58, the Multilingual Education Act, means for California and Kern County.
Great. Okay, we'll include a link in that on our online. So Dr. Jeanine Kraybill and Schmolitics say yes on Proposition 58.